LEGO Marvel sets have always seemed to lack representation when it comes to the Fantastic Four. That's why I decided to take matters into my own hands and make a LEGO Silver Surfer in a previous video. But today there's another Fantastic Four character that we're going to make from scratch. To recreate the iconic chase scene from the opening of Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer in my LEGO Marvel City, I'm going to be building Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, since LEGO has yet to do it themselves. Before I started looking for the perfect pieces to represent this minifigure, I first did a whole bunch of research on different colors. I wanted to represent the flame orange color of Johnny Storm perfectly, so I looked at everything from reddish orange to neon orange to translucent orange to get the perfect color. So once I narrowed it down to a couple different colors, that's when the fun part started. Now it was up to me to research and find the right pieces to represent this minifigure. And luckily for me, LEGO has made a lot of fire-based characters in the past, so there were a lot of options to choose from. However, ironically, my research in the beginning led me towards a water-based character. For whatever reason, this Aquaman torso stood out to me as an option to use for the Human Torch. Even though it had this very obvious Aquaman belt and green hands, there were things that could be done about that. By simply switching the green hands out for orange ones, I thought that already made it look a little bit better. However, that belt was still a problem, and that's when I decided it was time to amputate. By swapping the arms backwards on the torso, it gets rid of that Aquaman belt logo and still has that muscular feature to the torso. However, even after all that work, I just don't think this is what I'm looking for the Human Torch. So let's try my next option. And admittedly, it's a pretty weird choice, but hear me out. There's something about this Tigger that just gives me the vibe of the original 1960s Human Torch. And I think it has something to do with the black lines on his torso and arms. So if we remove his head, and his tail, I think there's something here that we can work with. By swapping the arms similar to what I did with the Aquaman figure, the black lines are only on the front now. My only hesitation is that it might not line up with what I have in mind for the headpiece, which is a translucent orange Ninjago head, which is kind of funny that this is the second time I'm using a Ninjago head for a Fantastic Four figure that I'm building. The first being a Zane head for my Silver Surfer, and I think I might have been right with it not lining up exactly the way I thought it would.
Well, maybe it's just because you're ugly.
And while it's not horrible, especially if Tigger is one of the few orange minifigures you have access to, I can definitely do better than this. And this is exactly why we do research on Bricklink for hours on end, because without it, I would not have found this next figure. Say hello to my boy Flama. This minifigure ran me about $20, and while I wish it was cheaper, once I saw it, I knew I needed to have it. Because honestly, there's minimal work to be done here to turn it into Johnny Storm. For starters, we're going to take this flame helmet off and change the head, because that's a little too menacing for Johnny Storm. And while we're at it, we can also take off the flame shoulder pads. But once we put this Ninjago head on, I'm definitely going to reapply the flame helmet, because that just looks like the Human Torch right there. And while this already looks pretty great, there's a couple more things we can add to round it off and complete the look. For starters, we're going to give him some of these handheld flame accessories that you see in a lot of different sets to make it look like he's shooting fire. And I think one of the more iconic parts about the Human Torch is when he leaves his flame trail in the sky when he's flying. We're going to add this simple 1x1 stud with a hole in it to the bottom of the minifigure. And since there's an open hole stud connection now, you can get this flame piece with a bar on the bottom inside the bottom of his leg piece. And that way it looks like he's shooting flames out as he's flying. And now I think it's more in line with what I was envisioning at the beginning. So here you can see I have my Marvel City set up with my Sanctum Sanctorum, my Daily Bugle, and my Avengers Tower over here all next to each other. And if you're curious how I set all of this up, I'll link that video above and below. But for now, I think we're going to focus over on the left side here, and I think we're going to be putting Human Torch over here in between the two buildings, because you can see I already have my Silver Surfer from a previous video here, and then I also have my Dr. Doom, which I made recently, and I'll link that video as well. So I think I'm going to have Human Torch somewhere in the center here, filling this negative space, kind of duking it out with these two. That way we stay on brand with the Fantastic Four theme in the middle here. And I've made this very simple stand here for him to be placed in the city. I just have one of those regular posing sticks that a lot of people use, and then I just put an extra piece here so we can kind of alternate the way that which he's facing. That way he can kind of be racing next to Silver Surfer. And luckily there is one single stud right here, oops, we're losing Silver Surfer, on the edge of the Sanctum Sanctorum here, so I can have Silver Surfer kind of racing above the Human Torch here on the edge of the Sanctum. And I think that conveys that scene from the movie pretty well here, so I think it looks really good with all the figures next to each other from the Fantastic Four movies. So if you enjoyed how I took matters into my own hands and made my LEGO Human Torch here, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.